I just found out my wife secretly sold our family home for $350, $0, then used the money to fund her affair with my best friend. And now she's claiming she's entitled to half of everything in a bitter legal battle. How do I even trust anything anymore? I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. The thing is, I found out my wife Lisa was cheating on me. And not just that, she sold our family home for $350, $0, to fund her affair with my best friend Mark. Yeah, you read that right. It's like a bad soap opera, only it's real life and I'm living through it. I want to get this all out, try to make sense of how everything spiraled so fast, and maybe get some advice from people who've been through something similar. We'd been married for about 10 years. I thought we had a good thing going, or at least that's what I believed. Lisa was always the kind of woman who knew how to charm her way into a room with her bitchy attitude sometimes, but she was smart, ambitious, and she seemed to genuinely love me. Or at least that's what I convinced myself of. We had a house, a nice one, in a decent neighborhood, and two kids, a boy and a girl, who were the light of our lives. Things started to feel off about 6 months ago. Little things. She'd be secretive about her phone, hiding texts, deleting messages. She'd go out with friends but come back looking like she'd just been somewhere else entirely. I'd ask her about it, and she'd brush me off, say I was paranoid or that I was overthinking. But I knew her too well. I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes sometimes, the way she'd avoid my gaze or get defensive when I pressed her about her whereabouts. Then, about a month ago, I started noticing her talking on the phone more often, whispering or stepping outside to take calls. Her behavior was getting more erratic. I found her phone one night when she left it on the kitchen counter, and I saw a string of messages from Mark, flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up. I froze. Mark and I had been friends for years. I trusted him, but now I didn't know what to think. The real blow came a few days later when I decided to check the bank statements more closely. I'd been suspicious and I wanted to see if there was anything I'd missed. That's when I saw it, a large withdrawal of $350, $0, from our joint account. It was marked as sale of property, but I knew we hadn't put the house on the market. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she sell our home, our family's home, without telling me? And then I saw the buyer's name, Mark. My heart sank, my mind raced, it all clicked. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She sold the house, took the money, and then I found out she'd been sneaking around with Mark, my best friend. The betrayal hit me like a punch in the gut. I confronted her that same night. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I showed her the bank statement, the proof of the sale, and asked her outright, "Lisa, what the hell is going on? Did you sell the house? Are you cheating on me with Mark?" She looked at me, her eyes cold, and for a moment I thought she'd deny everything. Instead, she just smirked and said, "You're overreacting. It's none of your business." That's when I knew things had gone too far. Her reaction didn't surprise me. Lisa has always been good at lying. She's manipulative, bitchy, and she always manages to turn things around to make herself look innocent. She's the kind of woman who can twist any situation to her advantage. But I wasn't buying her crap anymore. I could see through her. She was cheating, she sold the house, and she was claiming she was entitled to half of everything, even though she was the one who betrayed me. The emotional started then. I felt shock, rage, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I'd built a life with her, and now I was questioning everything. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face, sell the home we raised our kids in, and then have the audacity to claim she deserved half the money? It was unbelievable. I felt like I was in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling around. Her lies, her betrayal, and the thought of losing everything. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I trust her after all the signs? It was a mess. I felt humiliated, angry, and completely lost. I knew I had to do something, but at that moment I didn't know what. All I knew was that my world had been turned upside down, and I was left trying to pick up the pieces of a life I thought I knew. The next few days were a blur of anger and confusion. I couldn't focus on anything else. Every time I looked at the house, I saw memories of a life that suddenly felt like a lie. I kept replaying that night, the confrontation, her smirk, and her ridiculous claim that she was entitled to half of everything. Honestly, I was furious. Not just because she cheated, but because she thought she could get away with it with no consequences. I started digging deeper. I needed to know exactly what she'd done with the money. I found out she'd transferred most of it into her personal account, which she'd set up under a fake name. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I also discovered she'd been secretly seeing Mark for a while, not just a few times, but consistently. They'd been sneaking around, meeting up at hotels, going on trips. I found receipts of hotel bookings, late-night dinners, and even some explicit photos she'd sent him. It was disgusting. The whole thing made me feel sick. I couldn't believe the woman I'd loved, the mother of my children, had been lying to me for so long. And Mark. I trusted him too. We'd gone fishing together, played golf, even had beers at the bar. Now I saw him for what he really was, a backstabbing bastard who used my wife to get what he wanted. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time I was more prepared. I wanted to hear her explanation, her lies, her excuses. So I set up a meeting at a coffee shop, a neutral place where I could get some answers. She showed up, looking angry and defensive, but I didn't hold back. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady but cold, "I know everything. About the sale of the house, about you. And Mark, don't bother lying, I've seen the proof. How could you? How could you sell our home, our family's home, and then think you could just walk away with the money and me none the wiser?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're overreacting. It's not your business what I do with my life. I deserve some happiness too, you know, and Mark, he's special. You wouldn't understand." I felt my blood boil. "You think you're entitled to half of everything, but you're the one who betrayed me. You lied, you cheated, and you sold the house behind my back. How do you justify that?" Her eyes flashed. "I don't owe you anything. You've been distant for years, always working or ignoring me. Mark makes me feel alive, something you never did, and I don't care what you think. I'll take what I'm owed, and if that means fighting you in court, so be it." That was the moment I realized she'd gone completely off the rails. She was twisting everything, trying to paint herself as the victim. But I knew better. I knew she was the villain here. Still, her words cut deep. It was like watching someone tear apart what little was left of my trust. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly a little broken. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd let her manipulate me for so long. I'd always thought I was a good husband, a good father. Now I was left with nothing but questions and a gnawing sense of loss. I was angry at her, yes, but I was also angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. How blind I'd been. I started to think about everything I'd done for her, sacrificed for her, and how she'd repaid me with lies and betrayal. The pain was almost unbearable, but I knew I had to keep my head clear if I wanted to deal with this mess. I also started planning my next move. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her walk all over me. I had to protect what was mine, my home, my children, my dignity. I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. But I also knew I needed to be smart. This wasn't just about emotions, it was about money, power, and who had the right to what. That's when I realized I had a long battle ahead, and I wasn't even close to ready for it. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I wanted to be prepared if this turned into a legal fight, and honestly, I needed to feel like I was doing something, anything, to regain control. I dug through bank accounts, looked for any other hidden assets, and even hired a private investigator to see if Lisa was still sneaking around behind my back. It turned out she was still seeing Mark regularly, even after the first confrontation, and she was lying about her whereabouts every chance she got. One thing that kept gnawing at me was how she justified everything. She kept claiming she was entitled, that she deserved a share of everything because she'd helped build our life. I couldn't believe her audacity. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but now she was downright delusional. She insisted that since she was married to me, she was owed half of everything, including the house, the savings, even the small investments I'd made. That was her logic, and she was sticking to it. I knew I had to fight fire with fire. I started to learn about the legal process, about divorce laws, property rights, and how to protect myself. I reached out to a lawyer, someone who specialized in divorce and asset division. She was cold but professional, and she explained that Lisa's claim to half of everything wasn't necessarily guaranteed, especially since she'd sold the house illegally and was caught lying about the sale. I felt a flicker of hope, but I also knew it wasn't going to be easy. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude only got worse. She was bitchy, manipulative, and downright nasty. She'd call me names, accuse me of being jealous or controlling, and try to turn the kids against me whenever she could. She'd say I was too paranoid, that I was overreacting, and that I should just accept her entitlement. It was infuriating. I could see her trying to paint herself as the victim, but I wasn't falling for it. One night, she came home angry because I'd told her I was going to take her to court. She yelled at me, saying I was ruining her life, that she'd lose everything, and that I was just trying to keep her down. That's when I snapped. I told her she'd betrayed me, our family, and everything we built. I said I was done playing nice, and if she wanted to fight, I was ready. I also told her I'd find out exactly what she'd done with the money, and I'd make sure she paid for her lies. The emotional toll was wearing me down, but I couldn't let her see that. I had to stay strong. I'd always been the stable one, the dependable husband, and I refused to let her manipulate me into giving up. But deep down, I was scared. Scared that I'd lose everything: my house, my kids, my reputation. The betrayal cut so deep, I honestly didn't know how I was going to get through this. That night, I sat alone in what used to be our living room, staring at the empty space where our family photo used to hang. I felt a strange mix of rage and sadness. Rage at Lisa for what she'd done, and sadness because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. But love doesn't survive betrayal like this, and I knew I had to start thinking about my own future, about protecting what little I still had left. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not just because she cheated, but because she'd lied about so much. She lied about the sale, about Mark, about everything. And the worst part, she thought she was entitled to more, to everything, even after all the damage she'd caused. That's when I understood. This wasn't just about money or the house. It was about respect, boundaries, and the fact that I'd been played for a fool. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew I had to be ready for whatever came next. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I kept pushing forward with the legal process, trying to get my ducks in a row, but it was hard not to get consumed by the anger and betrayal. Every time I looked at the house, I saw her face, smirking, dismissive, like she thought she was above all this. And Mark. I couldn't get him out of my head either. My best friend, someone I'd trusted for years, turned out to be nothing more than a backstabbing cheat. The thought of him in bed with my wife made my stomach turn. I started to realize how much I'd been blind. I'd always believed Lisa was ambitious, maybe a little bitchy, but she was a good person deep down. Turns out she was just good at hiding her true nature. She'd been lying to my face for months, sneaking around, selling our home, and using my trust to manipulate me. That realization hit hard. I felt anger, yes, but also a deep sense of loss. Loss of the woman I thought I knew and the family I thought we had. I managed to get a hold of some of the bank transfers. It turned out she'd been funneling money into a secret account, probably to hide assets from the divorce proceedings. I hired a forensic accountant to help me trace every dollar. The more I looked, the more I found. She'd been planning this for a long time, and I was just the fool who got played. One night I decided I needed to confront her again. I called her and told her I wanted to meet. She was bitchy on the phone, trying to downplay everything, saying I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that she deserved happiness. But I wasn't buying her crap anymore. I told her I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I was going to expose everything. When she arrived at the coffee shop, she looked confident, like she already knew she had the upper hand. She smirked as she sat down across from me, expecting me to back down. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Lisa, I know what you did. I know about the sale, about Mark, about the money. You thought you could just do this and I wouldn't find out. Well, I did, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're just jealous, you're insecure. Mark makes me happy and I don't care what you think. I've earned this. You're just mad because I'm finally taking control of my life." That's when I snapped. "You think you're entitled to everything, but you're the one who betrayed me. You lied, cheated, and sold our home behind my back. and you think you're the victim. No, you're the villain here, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." She tried to deny everything, but I had enough evidence to drown her in her lies. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to fight her for custody of the kids, and that I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. Her bitchy attitude only made me more determined. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt rage, heartbreak, and a sickening sense of betrayal. I'd loved her, trusted her, built a life with her. Now that life was crumbling around me. The thought of losing everything, my home, my family, was almost too much to bear. But I knew I couldn't let her win. She'd already taken so much from me, and I wasn't going to let her take anything else. As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally standing up for myself, but dread because I knew this was only the beginning. She was going to fight me hard, and I had to be ready for whatever she threw my way. The betrayal cut so deep that I didn't know how I'd ever trust again, but one thing was clear. I was done being passive. It was time to take control, protect what mattered, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. Over the next couple of weeks, everything escalated. I stayed sharp, working closely with my lawyer, digging through every detail, every document, every secret account Lisa had set up. She was relentless in her bitchy attitude, trying to spin her lies and claim she was the victim. She'd call, scream, accuse me of ruining her life, and even try to manipulate the kids into thinking I was the bad guy. But I held my ground. I knew I had the evidence, and I was determined not to let her manipulate me anymore. The court date was set. I remember feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and resolve. I was tired of the lies, tired of the betrayal, but I also knew I had to fight for what was right. Lisa's argument was that she deserved half of everything because she'd contributed to the marriage. She said she helped raise the kids and manage the household, so she was entitled. I couldn't believe her audacity. I told the lawyer she was full of shit. She hadn't contributed anything but lies and betrayal. During the hearing, Lisa showed her true colors. She sat there, bitchy as ever, trying to look innocent. She claimed she was entitled to half of the house, the savings, even some of my investments. But I had the receipts, the proof of the illegal sale, the secret accounts, the lies. I presented everything. The judge looked at her and then at me, and I could tell he saw through her bullshit. He told her she had no right to the house since she sold it without my knowledge, and that her claim to assets was questionable given her deception. That was a victory, but it didn't come without a cost. Lisa was furious, calling me a bastard, saying I was ruining her life, that she'd never forgive me. She stormed out, bitching about how she'd fight me in court and take everything she could. I watched her leave, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. I'd won some battles, but I knew the war was far from over. She was determined to make my life hell, and I had to stay vigilant. The aftermath was a mess. I moved out of the house, not because I wanted to, but because I knew I couldn't stay there with her anymore. The kids stayed with me most of the time, but Lisa kept trying to manipulate them, telling them I was the bad guy. It hurt, seeing the kids caught in the middle, but I tried to stay strong for them. I kept fighting for custody, knowing that Lisa's bitchy attitude and lies wouldn't hold up in court. I also started rebuilding my life. I found a small apartment nearby, just enough to get away from her toxic presence. I focused on work, on my kids, and on myself. I realized I'd been a fool to trust her so blindly, and I vowed to be more cautious moving forward. I'd learned that betrayal can come from the people you love most, and sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it costs everything. Through all this, I learned a lot about trust, about human nature, and about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Lisa's bitchy, manipulative attitude didn't break me, it made me stronger. I'm still in the middle of this mess, but I know I'll come out of it better. I just wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but that's life, right? Sometimes you only see the truth when it's staring you right in the face. And now I'm just trying to move forward, rebuild what she tried to destroy, and make sure she never gets the chance to hurt me again. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole nightmare changed me. At first, I was just by her betrayal, angry, hurt, and feeling like I'd lost everything I thought mattered. But as the dust settled, I started to see things more clearly. I learned that trust isn't something you can take for granted, especially with someone you're supposed to love. Lisa's bitchy attitude, her manipulations, her lies, they all exposed a side of her I never knew. It's funny how life can teach you that people aren't always who they seem to be. I also learned that money can be a powerful weapon, and if you're not careful, it can be used against you in ways you never imagined. Selling our house without my knowledge was a wake-up call. I never thought she'd do something so reckless, so manipulative. I never thought my best friend would betray me like that. But I guess the lesson here is to always stay vigilant, especially when it comes to your assets and the people closest to you. The legal battle was exhausting. The court proceedings, the accusations, the lies she threw at me, all of it took a toll. But standing my ground and fighting for what was right gave me a sense of closure. I may have lost the trust I once had in her, but I gained clarity on what kind of person she truly is. She's vindictive, entitled, and manipulative, and I refuse to let her define my future. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life. My kids are my anchor, and even though things are still messy, I'm making progress. I've learned to be cautious with whom I trust, to read between the lines, and to never ignore the red flags. The experience has made me tougher, more guarded, but also more aware of my worth. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully forgive her. Not because I don't want to, but because some wounds run too deep. Still, I've come to accept that I can't change what happened, only how I respond to it. I'm choosing to move forward, to heal, and to make sure I never let someone betray me like that again. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your gut, watch the signs, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. People can surprise you in good ways or bad. But at the end of the day, your happiness and integrity matter more than their lies or manipulations. Stand up for yourself, even if it means losing some people along the way. Because in the end, the only person you can truly count on is yourself.